Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Thursday. My name is Lindsay D'Souza, and I work in the Office of Alumni Advancement here at McMaster, and we are so pleased to have you join us for our event today, The Psychology of Surviving and Thriving in a Pandemic Semester with Dr. Joe Kim. Dr. Joe Kim is an associate professor in psychology, neuroscience, and behavior at McMaster, and is actively involved in the scholarship of teaching and learning. He coordinates the innovative McMaster Introductory Psychology, Mac Intro Psych program, and he ordinates the innovative McMaster, which combines traditional lectures with interactive online resources and small group tutorials. And the program has been prominently featured in Maclean's, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, and numerous education media outlets. Dr. Joe Kim directs the Education and Cognition Lab, which aims to understand how cognitive principles such as attention, memory, and learning can be applied to develop evidence-based interventions in education and training. He also organizes the annual McMaster Conference on Education and Cognition, which brings together cognitive scientists, educators, and policymakers to explore how cognitive science can be applied to educational policy and instructional design. And with an active interest in curriculum and education, he is regularly invited to deliver keynotes and workshops on blended learning, applied cognition in teaching practice, presentation design, and productivity. And recent honors include the D2L Innovative in Teaching and Learning Award, Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, Residence Life Campus Partner of the Year, Innovator of the Year Award, President's Award for Excellence in Course and Resource Design. So we're very excited to have you here with us today, Dr. Kim, and I will let you take it away. And for all our attendees, please feel welcome to post your questions in our Q&A, just located at the bottom of your screen. And also in the chat, there will be a PDF to follow along that Dr. Kim has prepared for you. So take it away, Dr. Kim.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay, and to the McMaster Alumni Association for organizing this talk today for the hundreds of super keen students that have joined us even before the semester has started. I'm really happy to be here with you today. We're going to be talking about the psychology of surviving and thriving in a pandemic semester. Also joining us today, I want to introduce two of my teaching assistants in introductory psychology who are going to help out with moderating the Q&A and the chat. So first of all, we have Hannah Armstrong. Hannah is one of our new TAs this year. Also, we have Kezra Mohibi. He is our second moderator. So at some points, I'll be asking you to contribute. Please feel free to use the chat to make your contributions. And if you have a specific question, also just post it to the Q&A. Okay, so let's get started. Why are we all here today? Well, there's one question that I want to help us understand. How can I meet school demands with my attention, time, and resources? But of course, it's more complicated than that. How can I meet my school demands with limited attention, time, and resources? We all have limited cognitive resources. We have limited time, and we have limited resources available to us. And in this pandemic context, I think things are even harder. We're all stuck at home. There's lots of different pressures, different things impacting us. So I would say it would be accurate to say, how can I meet the increasing school demands with my limited attention, time, and resources? Okay, so what's the answer? Well, here's the answer. We're going to be talking about one theme throughout this entire presentation today: focus, problem solving, and restoring. So these are the themes that we're going to be talking about throughout today's presentation: focus, problem solve, restore, and then repeat this process. Okay, so what do I mean by focus? Okay. Imagine that you are in the middle of an online call through Zoom or Teams. You've been assigned to a group and you are having a discussion with your new group member. And let's make it a little bit more accurate. You probably don't just have that one app open for Teams or Zooms. There's probably a whole other bunch of things that are open up on your computer. Maybe some social media going on at the same time. And this is the first time that you're chatting with this new group member. And in the middle of the conversation, as things happen, the internet goes down. And then when you reconnect, you start talking to the person again. But if you were actually now speaking to a completely different person, do you think you would realize that this person has been switched? Might sound like a silly question, but this is the basis of a famous study done by Simons and Levins in 1998. So, in this study, a Confederate, a person who was in on the experiment, stood at a street corner and he asked people for directions. And after a few minutes of having a conversation, in the middle of the conversation, his body is swapped by another Confederate who is also in on the experiment. And the dependent variable here is pretty straightforward. Would that participant notice that they're now speaking to a completely different person? So let's join this experiment midway through. So here is that participant. He's been talking with the Confederate. We have a little switcheroo. And now that same participant is speaking with a completely different person. And this particular participant, doesn't seem to notice. And you might think that this is the exception to the rule, that surely if you were in this position, you would notice that you're speaking to a completely different person. If you were on a Zoom call and the person you're speaking with was swapped for another person, surely you would notice. In fact, in this study, they found that 50% of participants did not notice that they were speaking to a completely different person. And so, what this and many, many other studies in cognitive psychology demonstrate is that we vastly overestimate how much information we can process with our limited attentional resources. Okay, what do I mean by problem solving? Okay. By that, I mean, think think like a scientist. Identify recurring problems that are coming up in your own study plans. Um, then propose a solution, some sort of solution that you can actually test out, see how it works, collect feedback, and refine that solution, and then repeat this process. So let me just give you a few examples. So here's a few different things that I have to do as a regular part of being a professor. So I have to prepare presentations. I have to answer many, many emails, sometimes, over 100 emails a day. And back in the day, I used to travel. So, about once a month, I might be asked to go somewhere and give a presentation or a workshop or a lecture. So I'd have to pack a suitcase or at least an overnight bag. Now, here are recurring problems or challenges or tasks that I have to do all the time. Now, the best thing that we can do here is that rather than just reinventing the wheel, every single time I'm faced with preparing a presentation or answering emails or even just packing my suitcase, I can identify this as a recurring problem or challenge, figure out some sort of solution, test and refine that, and then repeat this process. So I don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. So when I am preparing any type of presentation, I follow through some typical planning stages that I've developed over the years. And so I'm not just staring at a blank screen. I have a game plan of how I'm going to put together a presentation. This saves me a lot of time and helps me make better presentations. For emails, so, for a person that gets a lot of emails, I have to type the same thing over and over again. And so once I find a long series of sentences or a paragraph I have to write over and over again, instead of retyping it every single time, I just assign a shortcut to it. And so with just a few keystrokes, I could put a lot of information, and this syncs with my phone. So even when I'm on my phone, I could send pretty quick messages. And the app that I happen to use is called Text Expander. That works for a Mac, and for PCs, I believe there's an app called Phrase Express. It's such a good investment of my time and resources. And finally, um, every time I ever had to pack a bag, I found it's just something that I ended up procrastinating doing. For some reason, I don't know, I just didn't really like packing. And it would usually take me about 30 to 45 minutes the night before, looking around, worrying, wondering if I got everything. Then I realized I basically need the exact same things on every trip. And so the solution was to put together an essential items list and save it. And then test out that list, make sure it's good, update it, and now every single time I have to pack, I just pull out this essentials list. It takes me 5 minutes to pack. As long as I bring all of these things, I'm fine. And so that will save me 45 minutes instead of yeah, rather than the quick 5 minutes. And it also saves me the anxiety. So that's what I mean by identifying a problem, testing out a solution, and then refining that solution and then repeating. Okay, what do I mean by restore? By restore, I mean that you can't just work hard. Of course, that's important, but you also have to restore. So we have limited attention, motivation, and energy levels. And so it's very important for us to take time and build into our schedule restoration. So, what's the best thing that you can do? Well, research shows that the absolute best thing that you could do to break up your day would be to go for a 30-minute walk through nature. So, some sort of trail hike for 30 minutes, that would be the best possible thing that you could do. Um, Hard to do that though. You might not have access to a nature trail near you. You might not have half an hour. So there's some really interesting research from McMaster University by Marty Gabala that shows that just doing what he calls exercise snacks. So if you have access to stairs and just running up and down 3 flights of stairs several times a day can significantly impact your physical fitness. And we know that there's a connection between healthy physical function, mental and emotional functioning as well. So even if you have just a few minutes and you could work in climbing 3 flights of stairs, or in the absence of stairs, even just kind of running on the spot, doing some sort of stretching exercise several times a day, it will do a lot to help you move towards restoration. Okay, so I'm actually interested in other types of ways that we can restore. So you could do a 5-minute stretch or exercise, even just from your own room. You could change the context, give you sort of a bit of a break and escape from the work that you're doing by focusing on a social gratitude letter. We can engage in progressive relaxation, do some sort of nature reflection. This is really interesting. So, even if you can't go out into nature, if you can take some time to close your eyes and reflect and think about your favorite trail, your some forest that you like to go to, some hike that you like to go on, and just kind of, let your mind drift there, that will also help. You can increase this process by listening to a meditation track, having some sort of nutritious snack. So, all of these just take several minutes to do. And I know a lot of colleagues who, tell me about how they're on Zoom or some other sort of online media for 8 hours in a row. And when I always tell them is that no one could pay attention for 8 hours straight, at some point, you're going to get diminishing returns on this continued investment of time. And so even if you can just carve out, a few minutes between meetings to engage in one of these types of breaks, it could be restorative. So what do these 6 different types of breaks have in common? Well, we think that they are restorative and they shift the context. So it gives you a chance to replenish attention, motivation, and energy. And we're going to go through and model some of these breaks in today's presentation. So you get a taste of what it's like to try out these different types of breaks. So let's actually start right now. We're going to do a progressive relaxation. So what you're going to do is inhale, then hold that inhalation, then exhale, hold that exhalation, and we'll begin again. So I want everyone to inhale, hold that breath, exhale, hold that, and we'll begin again. Inhale, hold that, exhale, hold that. All right. And now I want you to just play along with me. Close your eyes and, from the comfort of your chair, I want you to scrunch up your toes and really feel that. Then flex your legs. Feel that flex in your calves. All right, then flex out your torso. Flex your arms. All right, let's flex your neck. And then scrunch up your face. Okay, and then we'll do a breath one more time. Okay. I want you to inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. All right. Congratulations, everyone. We just did a progressive relaxation. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go dig a little bit deeper into each of these processes of focusing, problem solving, and restoring. So let's focus on the focus part. Okay. Question for you. How many people out there would say that they're good at multitasking? So please share your comments on chat. And I'm particularly interested to hear, how do you know that you are good at multitasking? Well, the way that scientists measure multitasking ability is to look at, and sorry, I'm just reading through some of the responses here. I'm wondering if we could identify anyone who thinks that they're pretty good at multitasking. It's looking like most people are saying that they're not very good at multitasking. Well, that's good to hear, because one thing that we have to acknowledge is that sometimes you have no choice to multitask, but often you do have a choice on whether or not you're going to multitask. And one way that cognitive psychologists measure our abilities at multitasking is to see how does your performance, how is it affected as we add additional tasks to your plate. So one of the findings that has emerged from this literature is that generally all of us are really bad at multitasking. There's a very small segment of our population that shows diminished drops in their overall performance. These are called supertaskers. So there's maybe less than 2.5% of all human beings. As you add additional tasks, they show less of a decline in performance compared to all other human beings. So on this Zoom call right now, there might be a handful of people here who are super taskers. The rest of us, all of our performance declines as we add additional tasks. So let me just demonstrate a multitasking procedure for you. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to actually say this out loud. So Hannah and Kezra, maybe you guys could even model this for us. So what you're going to do is read each individual word of the sentence. And then afterwards, I want you to if it's a noun, say the word yes. If it is not a noun, say the word no. And then you will read through the whole sentence. Okay. So if we read this sentence, it would be Monica, yes. Smiled, no. At, no. The, no. Snow, yes. Okay. So pretty straightforward. Okay. Everyone ready? Here is the real deal. So everyone at home, I want you to actually try this out, do exactly what we did. Okay? So here we go. The, no. Cat, yes. Was, no. Content, no. In, no. The, no. Barn, yes. With, no. The, no. Mice, yes. Okay. I'll let you judge for yourself how well you did at this multitasking procedure along with me. So you had to do two different things at once. You not only had to read aloud individual words of this pretty simple sentence, you also had to come up with a category for each of these words that you read. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to actually think back to the whole sentence that you just read aloud. How accurately can you recall the sentence? Maybe you remember something about a cat and maybe something about a barn and a mouse. Go ahead. So if you think you got it, want you type out the exact sentence in the chat. Well, for most people, they're going to have a hard time. They remember probably most of it, but not the entire sentence. The entire sentence was the cat was content in the barn with the mice. Pretty simple sentence. But because you were distracted, you had two different things to do at once. Most people do not fully accurately recall this simple sentence. Now, think about this. Your eyes went across the screen and you saw all of the words of the sentence. So visually, you captured the information. The sound of each word, you actually spoke out loud. And so you definitely got this information, but you were asked to do two different things at once. So what this and many other demonstrations show is that the cost of task switching, going back and forth between two different tasks, or maybe even more, there might be additional multitasking challenges put forth to you. It drains more cognitive resources than single tasking. And so a very simple piece of advice that emerges from here is that if you have a choice, single task and do things in sequential order. Do one task, get it done, and then move on to the next task. Having twice as much time, but doing multiple tasks at once will slow you down and will also decrease your overall accuracy and performance. Now, here's an interesting study done by one of my colleagues, Faria Sana. What happens in an actual lecture setting where there might be lots of multitasking going on? In this study, we were interested in looking to see what if you, as a diligent student, are single tasking. You're trying to focus on the lecture, but there's the temptation of other people around you multitasking. So that was the basis of this experiment. So students are sitting in a lecture hall, and spread out throughout this lecture hall are some Confederates or people who are in on the experiment posing as students. They are the only ones that have a laptop with them, and they are also taking notes during the lecture. Interestingly, periodically throughout the lecture, they start multitasking. They might start answering emails, sending a message, or doing some other unrelated task on their computer. The question here was, how does this multitasking behavior impact the students around them? And so we compared two different groups of students. So some students had a view of a multitasking peer. So where they sat, they happened to see someone beside them who would occasionally start multitasking. Other students in this lecture hall, just by where they were assigned a seat, did not have a view of a multitasking peer. And now we can ask a very simple question. When we give everyone a test about what they just learned, how do they perform? So we can look at the number of correct responses on a test based on this lecture, comparing these two groups of students. Students who had a view of a multitasking student and those who did not have a view. And what you find is that there's a significant drop in how much information you understand by just seeing someone else multitask. Why? Well, think about this. If you have a computer open and let's say, okay, I've heard I shouldn't multitask. You have, you're doing, you're writing out a draft of a paper that you have due, and you notice that your mail icon or your message icon is blinking. And you say to yourself, yeah, I'm not going to even go. I'm not going to open that. But by just thinking about multitasking, the temptation, it's already drawn some of your attention, energy, and motivation away from the primary task that you're focusing on. So, a simple solution here would be to make sure that you only have that one app open on your computer that's relevant to the primary task that you're trying to get done now. By having multiple notifications open, it's like having a view of a multitasking peer. So, this is really a question of self regulation and to some extent willpower. Can you delay the immediate gratification of opening up that email, that message, that social media contact for later when you're done this task? So, can you delay immediate reward for a reward later after the task that gets done? Well, so instead of having a screen that looks like this, where you have multiple things going on, ideally you want to take away that temptation and only have that one app open. And this can improve your own self regulation. Now, self regulation is something I'm really interested in from a psychology point of view. There is evidence that suggests that even at the age of 4, your self regulation already starts to develop. Your ability to ignore temptations and move on to delaying that immediate gratification. So, this is my daughter, Monica. And when she was 4 years old, I gave her what's called the marshmallow test. So I explained the rules to her. She could have one marshmallow right now, or if she could wait for 15 minutes and delay that immediate reward, she would get two marshmallows. Now, this is a test that Monica was trained for 4 years. And the way that I trained her was that, every time we went shopping and if we bought some sort of treat, when I put her in the car, the seatbelt, I would give her the treat and I'd say, this isn't for now. This is for later, after dinner. So she would say things like, well, can I smell it? Yeah, you can smell it. Can I poke it? Yes. Can I lick it? No, you cannot do that. Otherwise, you can kind of just hold it. And so, from a very early age, she learned that um, delaying immediate gratification, delaying that immediate reward was a normal thing. And so you can see her kind of struggling here, but she made it to the end and was able to get two marshmallows instead of one. And so, what I like to tell my students is that, look, if a 4-year old can delay immediate reward for 15 minutes, maybe you can do that too. And if you can do 15 minutes, maybe you could do half an hour. With even just half an hour of delaying immediate reward, you can get a lot of work done rather than having that reward at the same time, which will slow you down and lead you into a multitasking hole. Okay, now let's say you're on board so far. um, you acknowledge that we have limited attention, motivation, and energy levels. You're going to single task and you set to work. And as you're doing work, something goes wrong. Your mind starts to drift. So at the beginning of this study session, your attention, motivation, energy levels, they're at the top. You're ready to get some work. And then during this work period, these things start to go down. And at some point, there might even be a precipitous drop in your attention, motivation, and energy levels. And even though you continue to invest time, you're not really getting a lot to return on that. Um, so, what's going on here? Well, one of the things that might be going on is that there's a lot going on in your mind. So especially, during this pandemic, we're thinking about a lot of things. There's a lot of things in the news. We're constantly reading about COVID. There's lots of different challenges going on. And while you're trying to read, while you're trying to get some work done, some of these thoughts, tasks that you have to do, lots of things start drifting to your mind. Like, oh yeah, there's that assignment that I have to do. It's due Wednesday at 4 p.m. Oh yeah, I heard the Shoppers Drug Mart got hand sanitizer back. I gotta make sure I get some. Oh yeah, I don't have any paper for my printer. I'm already behind. I gotta start reading chapter 2 for my course and start making notes. And so while you're trying to do work, all of these thoughts start emerging and filling up your mind. And I really mean that. It starts filling up your mind. So while you're supposed to be focusing on the task at hand, like writing your paper, you have all of these things floating in your mind. Why? Well, it's because for most people, you don't have these recorded anywhere else. You are relying on your memory to keep track of all of these tasks that you have to get done. And so this is sort of like multitasking as well. On the one hand, you're trying to get your work done. And on the other hand, you're trying to keep track of all the other things that you have to do because you don't have them recorded anywhere else. And so there's a fancy term in psychology called cognitive offloading. So instead of keeping this active, this sort of secondary information that you don't need right now, instead of keeping it active and alive in your working memory, you can offload that. So write it down on a piece of paper. So instead of keeping it alive in memory, offload it onto a piece of paper. And so we're going to do that right now because I bet for most of you, you don't have an external record of these things that you are asked to keep track of. And so I'd like you to get a piece of paper right now, and we're going to do what's called a mind dump. So I want you to record everything that's in your working memory right now, some sort of task or important fact or something that you have told yourself you must remember, but you don't have it externalized. And the only way that it'll be kept alive is that if you keep it going in your working memory. So I'll give you some prompts to get started. So write these down on a piece of paper. Okay. So everything in your memory that you're forcing to stay alive while you're trying to focus even on this presentation. Okay. Can you think of any random tasks or things that you have to do after the presentation today? If you can, I'd like you to write them down right now on this piece of paper in front of you. I want you to think back to yesterday. Did you have any meetings or conversations? Were there emails or phone calls or messages that you are meant to return? And you just told yourself, oh, yeah, I should call back that person or I should send a message to that person. If you're the only record of it is keeping alive in your memory and you don't have this task written down, I'd like you to write it down on your piece of paper right now. Do you have classes that you still have to register for or any type of scheduling issues? Write down the specifics on the paper in front of you right now. Are there books or other sort of school supplies that you have to buy? I just saw someone put pay tuition. That looks like a big one. Um, Are there any housing issues? Are there any things that you have to take up with a landlord or, with organizing your room? Speaking of supplies, are there any specific groceries that you have to buy? I'm sure you've had the situation where in the morning you realize, oh, I need to buy some bread and milk. And later on in the afternoon, you might be in the middle of a conversation, you might be in the middle of a lecture, and you start thinking to yourself, what was that thing I was supposed to buy? And your mind starts drifting away to just try to recapture what you're supposed to remember. And that takes you away from the moment of being able to focus on that task at hand. Um, are there technical issues or repairs for any of your equipment, your computer, your phone, the internet? Are there software updates that you have to do that you just told yourself you would remember? Okay, let's take a big step back. Are there people in your life that you plan to have conversations with? And are there any fun things that you want to do? Maybe there's some online concerts or presentations like this, or shows that you've heard about. Maybe someone said, "Oh, you really have to watch a show on Netflix," and you just told yourself, "Yeah, okay, I'll remember that." But now you're actually using resources to keep alive that show that you're supposed to watch. So even fun things definitely offloaded. So I just saw a question about, is it better to type these out or write? It doesn't matter as long as you have a trusted place. I like to do this on my phone. So I have an app that I use. I just actually use the Microsoft To Do app. It doesn't really matter what app that you use. I like doing it on my phone because I can just kind of dictate it. So every time I think of something, a task I have to do or something I need to remember, rather than just telling myself, yeah, I'll remember that, I offload it onto this app on my phone. The most important thing is that you have a trusted place. And we'll come back to that later on in the presentation today about what we're going to actually do with this list. It's great to have something that's portable so that you can always take it around with you, a trusted inbox where you keep all of your information. Okay. Now, I want, I'd love to see in the chat, tell me How many people, how many items do you have in your list right now? I would bet most people have more than five. I'm seeing, you know, wow. So we've been doing this for just a few minutes, and I'm seeing responses in the teens, up to 20. Most people including concluding far too many. Now, one of the things that we know about human memory and working memory capacity is that generally we can keep track of, say, 5 to 9 items in our working memory. And right now, in just 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, if you've got, you know, 10 or more items written down, I want you to think about what a burden that is. Even while you're trying to have a conversation, even while you're trying to watch a TV show, if you're trying to keep track of a dozen or more items alive in your working memory, that's taking away from your performance of enjoying that television show on Netflix right now. And the truth is, you probably have more than a dozen items that you are relying on your memory to keep alive. And so, one homework assignment that I will recommend that you do is this weekend, invest 60 minutes to do a full mind sweep. So spend an hour, and we'll take an hour to fully dump out onto this piece of paper or your app, whatever your trusted inbox is. And what most people will find is that there's over 100 different items that you are keeping alive in your working memory. So if it if you weren't able to remember them, there'd be no other record of these. And even thinking about forgetting about some of these important tasks can cause anxiety. And so one of the things I recommend that you do is do this full mind sweep and then make it a regular practice. Anytime you think of anything that you have to do, add it to the list. On a daily basis, I typically add about 10 to 12 new items. And so, if I didn't actually cognitively offload these onto my inbox list, in a week, I could have over 100 plus items in just 1 week. Okay. Now, um, let's model another type of break right now. I think we're ready for one. We're going to try something called a social gratitude letter. Okay. So what we're going to do here is, instead of doing something physical, we're going to still shift the context away from this primary task of focusing on this presentation right now. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to think about a friend, a peer, or perhaps a family member. So think about this person right now. And then I want you to actually take a moment to think about the specifics of, why you might be grateful that this person is in your life based on your shared experiences. And, really kind of think about this. Maybe think about a specific experience that you have had with this person that you are thinking about right now. Think about something positive, a really interesting or fun shared experience. I want you to actually gather these thoughts and write them down. You could write them down on that piece of paper with the rest of your initial mind sweep. Gather these thoughts down. And while you're at it, I'd like you to actually just send this message. Send this message to this person right now. Let them know that you're thinking about this person, and not just thinking about them, but about something very specific. So, this is the change in context that you're doing right now. Okay, I see a really interesting question by Lamisa. How do you avoid thinking, stressing about a task even after writing it down? Well, I'd say the first step is actually writing it down. People get stressed about forgetting or worrying about forgetting about important tasks that they have to get done. In the second half of the presentation, we'll talk about kind of specific plans on how we're going to address each of these things. But I think the first thing is to make sure that you capture all of this really important information. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a moment to experience some gratitude and actually send out this message to this person that you connected with. Okay, so let's talk about an advanced section about the focus aspect of today's presentation. All right. Now, in the chat, tell me which of the following do you think is the most important for directing your life, your career, your pathway through McMaster University? What you love doing, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, or what you are good at. Which of these do you think is the most important? I think the message that, well, and the most common response I'm seeing here is what you love. And I think that's the message that most of us are receiving. You got to do what you love. And so, um, as a first year instructor, I meet a lot of students who would love to go to medical school. That's something that they've been thinking about their entire life. Um, and it's definitely something that you can get paid for. If you go to medical school, you'll probably get a job that you will get paid for, probably paid well. And I think you could definitely say that the world needs doctors, especially in this pandemic context. We're made even more aware of frontline workers and healthcare practitioners. Um, and the fourth thing that you have to really think about is also what are you good at? And so this is a hard question. So, yeah, the real answer here is you have to consider all four of these things. Not only what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you are good at. So it becomes a much more complex question. Um, so there's a really interesting concept, a Japanese concept called ikigai, which roughly translates to a reason for being. And it's an outlook on life where you actually really examine your life. So the idea here is that living an examined life adds meaning to the daily challenges that all of us face. And so if you focus exclusively on what you love and sort of ignore what you're good at and what you can be paid for and what the world needs, you might not be living a fully examined life. If, on the other hand, if you only focus on something that you can be paid for and completely ignore what you love and what you're good at and what the world needs, you're also you're going to be well paid perhaps, but you're going to feel empty. And so, what I encourage you to do is think about all four of these things. So, don't just kind of give yourself a reflexive end goal answer like, I want to go to med school, or I want to be a vet, or I want to just do this one thing. I really encourage you to actually take some time and think about all four of these really important factors. This will help you to have some sort of direction, not only in the programs that you select, the extracurricular activities that you might want to join, clubs, different interests that you pursue. And so I want you to think of your own limited attention, motivation, and resources as needing some sort of big direction. And so this is something that what we might call a mission statement. So large organizations have mission statements. Um, And people can have mission statements. So let me tell you a bit of background here. So when I first started at McMaster University and I started my research lab, at first I kind of just said yes to every possible experiment idea that came through our lab. But a lab is like any other organization. We have limited resources, we have limited budget, we have a limited number of computers, running rooms, resources, people in the lab. And so, in my very first year of running a lab, I found that we were doing many different things, many different experiments, but not very well. And so, instead, I've realized that we need some sort of mission statement. We have to have, even the lab has to be leading an examined pathway. And so, one weekend I took my lab and we decided to, one of the activities that we do together is come up with a mission statement. What is the purpose of our lab? And so at the end, here's what we came up with. So the lab is called the Education and Cognition Lab. And here's our mission: we use innovative tools to explore how applied cognition impacts authentic learning conditions. And so we used to do some experiments that were completely artificial and far removed from actual education, but might be of interest to other cognitive psychologists. What we realize is that at the end, we care most about how can we actually make changes in a real educational context. And so that's how we focus our questions. And so anytime a new experiment is proposed to the lab, and let's say that this is going to use 10% of all of the lab resources and personnel, that's a big decision to make. And so now we can hold it up against this template, this decision maker, and say, well, does this experiment line up with our lab mission statement? The answer is an astounding yes, then we will make it happen. If it's a no or even just a maybe, we're not going to invest in it. And I want you to think similarly about your own attention, motivation, and resources. If you had a choice to join a club or some sort of organization, the first thing that you should think about is, well, what sort of commitment will this take? Will this will take up 10% of my time, my schedule, my energy? That's a big commitment to make. Should I do it? Well, you need a personal mission statement. And so here's my personal mission statement: to help people enjoy lifelong learning, tell their stories, and use their time wisely. And here's a few different examples. And so, giving this presentation today completely lines up with my mission statement. So, it's very easy for me to say, yes, of course, I'm going to do this presentation. Um, and so, I would encourage you to also come up with your own personal mission statement. I want you to think about, what are your passions, your skills, your traits? What are your principles and values? What are your life and career goals? And once you've thought of that, you have a rough draft of your mission statement. And this is a very worthwhile use of your time to help you understand where you should be focusing. And so it's another homework assignment this weekend. I suggest that you invest at least 90 minutes. Try to maybe even go for a long walk through nature on a hike or a trail. That would be my favorite thing to do. And develop your mission statement. I want you to think about these questions. As an added bonus, maybe connect with a partner and give feedback, and check in with each other halfway through the semester to see how you're progressing. Now, these things are all available, these questions, on the handouts that are available. We can repost the Dropbox link where I have all of these key slides for you to do your own homework assignments this weekend. Okay, so that was kind of a deep dive into what I mean by focus. The next thing I would like to do is take a deeper dive into problem solving. Now, it goes unsaid that we're going through unprecedented times. I've never had this experience before of being at home essentially for almost a year now, and these circumstances have really led us to reevaluate our priorities. During the first few months of 2020, just a year ago, our priorities change. Do you guys remember when toilet paper suddenly became a leading commodity? And I want you to think about, how these changing circumstances affect your behavior. And I'll use myself as an example. So during the first few months of the pandemic, I found myself constantly wearing comfortable clothes. I was always in pajamas, track pants, or shorts. Um, Other thing I found is that I stayed up. I was constantly consuming news. It's the first thing that I did in the morning. I would be reading or listening to the news throughout the day. And it'd be the last thing that I did. I would be falling asleep, listening to the news, adding to my own anxiety and restlessness, not getting a very good night's sleep, breaking all my healthy routines like waking up at a decent hour, getting exercise, and getting started. And so I identified these behaviors and as recurring problems that had emerged that had to be solved. And so, a couple simple solutions. One is that when I was actually doing work, I would get changed. And so I am wearing work clothes right now because I'm actually doing some work right now. I found that by constantly being in my pajamas, it never helped. It prevented me from really getting into a working mindset. And secondly, I identified this recurring problem of over consuming news, what they call doom scrolling, just constantly going through. And so one of the things I realized I had to do was to break that cycle and get back into my regular routines of waking up early. So I actually really enjoy waking up early and experiencing the quiet morning where I can follow my routine of doing some meditation, doing some exercise, doing some journaling, and planning out my day. And once I did these two simple things, it really helped me to get back on track and be productive. So, um, I want you to think from your own personal situation about strategies that you can use to identify recurring problems that you are facing and how you can overcome them. So here are a couple other problems that I'll give you as examples. Um, we talked about mind wandering and how cognitive offloading can help, but sometimes even after you've done that, while you're trying to do work, especially with the internet, your mind can start wandering while you're trying to get real work done. So, for example, if I'm creating a presentation and suddenly I think to myself, I really need a picture of a dog for this slide. I could go online, start Googling pictures of dogs and thinking, yeah, yeah, no, no, not that one. And then, I could spend half an hour or an hour or more looking for the perfect picture of a dog for my presentation and convincing myself that I'm doing work, whereas I'm not really moving forward on my primary task of getting an outline done for my presentation. Secondly, another challenge that many of us are facing, and I'm surprised it hasn't happened to me yet during this presentation, is interruptions from your roommates or your family members or your pets while you're trying to get work done. So, here are some recurring problems that many of us are faced with. So, our challenge then is to come up with a solution, test it out, and refine it. So, how about this problem of, what I'm going to call productive procrastination? So, fooling yourself into thinking that you're getting a lot of work done. So I find myself in that situation when I have to get this presentation outline completed, and I find myself some busy work to do, like go online and find a picture of a dog wearing glasses. So, one way to overcome this solution is for me to actually turn off the Wi Fi on my computer. I will literally do that. If I find myself going down this productive procrastination pathway, I will go offline, and then I have a piece of paper beside me, and any task I can think of that requires the internet, I will actually write down on the piece of paper. And at the end, I'll save maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the hour. And that's when I'll turn the internet back on, the connection to my computer. And then I will go through this checklist of sort of fun things that I promise myself to do as a reward at the end of this productive period of focusing on my primary task. Secondly, many students, even in this pandemic situation, are living with roommates who might be interrupting you. How can you get through this? Well, it's hard. It admittedly is hard. One of the things that you might do is, put on headphones, give social cues that you don't want to be interrupted. It happens to me all the time as well. I'm trying to work or give a presentation, and my daughter will, knock on the door or just barge right in while I'm giving a lecture and interrupt me. How do you overcome things like that? Well, I tried to explain to her. And, eventually I learned that, sometimes you just have to fight fire with fire. And so, my daughter Monica has online school this week. And during one of her online classes, I decided to kind of show her what it's like to be constantly interrupted. So while she is in her online class, meeting with her teacher and her classmates, I would just, kind of barge into the room and say, "Hey, have you seen my sweater? No, no, no. You know the one that I'm looking for, the brown sweater." And she'd be kind of embarrassed and like kind of just shoo me away and say, "Oh, sorry, you're on a meeting right now. Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't realize." And I would leave. And of course, I would just return 2 minutes later and say, "Oh, can you peel these oranges for me? Oh, you're still on a meeting? Oh, sorry. The same meeting now? Oh, I didn't realize. Sorry about that." Um, and her teacher knew exactly what I was doing, and she thought this was hilarious. Monica thought this was pretty embarrassing. I had a few other ideas. I actually put this up on Twitter and said, "Hey, can anyone think of any other ways I could interrupt my daughter during her online class?" The best thing I was going to do, which I held back on, was I was going to come in and say, "Have you seen the lice brush? Because it's not where it normally is." "Oh, you're still in the meeting. Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Anyway, I didn't do that, but I think we learned to respect each other and give each other space when we're trying to do work. Okay, so here's what I want you to do right now. I've given you some examples from my life. I want you to think about a recurring problem that you are facing that's preventing you from getting your work done. And then, so maybe just in the chat, just share some recurring problems that you can identify right now. And that's a really important part of this process, identifying these recurring problems instead of just ignoring them, and then coming up with an actual solution. So I'm seeing things like messed up sleep schedule, um, not feeling motivated, too much social media. Lots of really interesting problems that I think all of us can really relate to. And that's the first step, identifying these problems. And the second step I want you to think about is, what is a solution? I want you to actually brainstorm a solution, and then I want you to implement that solution and give yourself feedback. How well is this solution actually working? refine that solution, and then improve upon it and move on to the next recurring problem that emerges. Okay, so that's what I mean by problem solving.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, that's my Apple Watch going off. I'm not quite sure why. Okay, sorry. All right. Now, okay. I'm just being mindful of our time here. I'm just going to jump ahead here about how I mentioned that I like to use a digital inbox to capture all of my thoughts. So I had you write them all down on a piece of paper. And an important part of having this digital inbox or this notebook, whatever the case it is to have it be a trusted place. And so you have to trust in yourself that you're going to actually do something with it. So several times a day, I will go through this inbox and assign these tasks to specific categories in my life. So I'll give you an example here. So here is a screenshot of an app that I have used to capture all of the random thoughts, tasks, ideas that come to mind. And on any given day, I might have over a dozen different tasks or ideas that come up. This app is called Things, but I mean, you could use any native app that's on your phone or your computer. Ideally, I would recommend an app that syncs between your phone and your computer if you have both of these items, so you always have an updated list with you. And I'll just give you an example. One of the things that came up on my list of random thoughts one day, it says audition lecture mosquito teen repellent. That means nothing to you, but I'll tell you what it means to me. I was driving in a car and I was listening to the radio, and there was a news story about this shopping mall that had a problem with loitering teenagers. So just so many teenagers were hanging out there, and a solution that they came up with was to play this high frequency pitch that only people with teenage ears can really hear and find annoying. And I thought that's a really interesting example that I could use in my lecture on audition in introductory psychology. So rather than just tell myself, oh, make sure you remember this example about mosquito teen repellent, I made a quick dictation into my app. And later, and as I said, I'll do this, a few times a day. I'll spend a few minutes going through. And once I come across this, oh yeah, that is a good idea. And I'm going to assign it to a to-do list called Intro Psych. So the next time I'm actually working on my lectures, I will look through this to-do list from Intro Psych, and this idea will pop up to the front of my mind. And now I can include it in that specific lecture. Okay. The final part that we're going to dive deep into is restore. So here's our familiar graph with our attention, motivation, and energy levels on the y-axis. And you can see that as you invest more and more time on the same task, even if you have the best of intentions, at some point, these attention, motivation, energy levels are going to drop. And so what can you do here? Well, some students I talk to, they say things like, well, I'm not going to leave my desk until I go through and understand everything. I'm not going to even take any breaks, maybe just go to the washroom and then come back, and I'm just going to, plug away until I get all of this done. Well, I don't think that's the best thing that you could do. If you find yourself reading and rereading the same sentence over and over again, and you're falling asleep at your desk, even if you put in another hour, you're not going to be getting much return on this investment. And so maybe this is a good time for you to take a strategic break. If you do a restorative break, that gives you a chance of resetting your attention, motivation, and energy levels. Instead, you could come back, continue again, there's going to, again, be a natural decline in your attention, motivation, energy levels, and then you take another break. And if you could put together, a series of these breaks, maybe you could reward yourself with a bigger break at the end where you could cook yourself a meal, go for a hike, watch a TV show after you've got this work done. Compare the total area under the curve for attention, motivation, and energy level for the orange lines versus the one student that just continues for 3 hours straight, but their mind just starts drifting away. You're going to get much more return on your investment for having taken those strategic breaks. Okay. So we talked about how the best type of break that you can take, that research shows, is exercise, taking ideally a 30-minute walk in nature on some sort of trail to sort of rejuvenate yourself, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. It's hard to do. But I would like you to actually think about this as a challenge. So I want you to think of, can you think of any ways in which exercise can be integrated directly into your study schedule? So if you have some ideas, please post them in chat right now on how you can do this. I'll give you an example of what from my work. One of the things that I do during second term in a non-pandemic context is there's a 2-week period where I am interviewing candidates to become TAs for Mac Intro Psych in the following year. And so I would spend 8 hours a day sitting at my desk, candidate after candidate. And as you can imagine, it's pretty exhausting. And so one solution that I came up with was, instead of having these 2 weeks where I'm just sitting at my desk, the first 15 minutes or so is sort of like a Q&A of kind of getting to know the candidate. I realized I don't really have to be at my desk. And so I turned these into walking interviews. So we would walk around campus and have actually a better natural discussion. We have a beautiful campus. And then when we came back, they would do a lesson. And during these 2 weeks, on average, every day, I would walk an extra 7 or 8 kilometers by just doing this. So here was a creative way that I integrated exercise directly into my work schedule. Okay, so here's something advanced. So remember when I said that, the first few months of the pandemic, I would be constantly consuming news. It would be the last thing I did before I go to bed. Well, ideally, you will have some sort of buffer zone leading to your sleep so you can have a restful sleep, the best chance, at least, at a restful sleep. So many of you have pointed out that they have challenges with a sleep schedule. So the big problem is that if you're constantly stimulating your mind, so if you're lying in bed on your phone, playing a game, watching videos, engaging in social media, you're getting yourself more and more amped up. It's going to be hard to actually slow down and fall asleep. So consider having some sort of buffer zone activity. So I actually have a reminder on my phone. It has a built-in app where you can set your ideal bedtime. Gives you a reminder 1 hour before. So that's when it actually locks up my phone. I mean, there's I can just do a couple of clicks and open my phone, but I find that's enough of a deterrent that it at least makes me think about, do I really need to use my phone? And so that's when I'll put away my phone. And then I encourage you to do one of these things: read a book, listen to relaxing music or a podcast, take a bath or a shower, yoga, do something offline, and do something interesting and engaging, not just work. There should be an end to your work day well in advance of this. So I'm talking about after dinner, you should really not be thinking about doing any additional work. You should be thinking about restoring yourself to be energized for the next day. So put away the phone, put away the computer, relax, do some sort of interesting buffer zone activity like this. Yeah, I'm seeing someone, in exasperation, right? Tara writes, no work after dinner. That's right. I generally do no work after dinner. I fill up my day, and then, pretty much at the end of that day, and then after dinner, I'm done, and I'm really focusing on just living a life, watching a show, a movie, cooking dinner, enjoying playing some sort of board game or crafts with my daughter, kind of fun, interesting things. And then that sets you up to have the best possible sleep. And then going to refresh yourself for the next day. Is it bad to keep your phone and laptop in your bedroom when you go to sleep? I would say if you put them right beside you, it becomes very tempting to open. So if they have to stay in your room, put them on the far side of your room, on your desk, on your bookshelf, somewhere away from you. If you need an alarm clock, you could buy an analog alarm clock for a few dollars, probably. Okay. Let's model one other type of break. This is to a meditation track. Now, some of you may have tried meditation. Some of you might be very skeptical. I would categorize myself as being in the group of people who is very skeptical about meditation. And now I find that this is an essential part of my day, actually parts of my day. The first thing I do in the morning is I will listen to a meditation track for 10 minutes. And at some point in the early afternoon, I will also do an additional 20 minutes of meditation. And I find that it completely helps me reset and even energize me so that I can get in a productive afternoon of work so that I could end my day at a realistic time and move forward. So, if you have never listened to a meditation track before, get ready. We are about to listen to a 3-minute sample of a meditation track. So, here we go.
I'd like to talk for a few minutes about gratitude. There's now a lot of research that suggests that gratitude is good for us. No surprise there. And as an emotion, it is very easy to invoke. Unless you are living the worst possible life, it should be easy to find something for which you're grateful. And it can be very skillful and wise to do this. Now, one reflection I find myself doing when I'm in some ordinary, contracted state of mind. Let's say I'm stressed out by something not going well. I'm reacting to some hassle. I could be caught in traffic and late for an appointment. I sometimes think of bad things that haven't happened to me. I might think that I haven't been diagnosed with a fatal illness. I'm not caught in a war zone. And I think of all the people on Earth in that moment who are suffering those sorts of dislocations in their lives. And then I reflect that if I were in their shoes, I would be desperate to get back to precisely the situation I'm now in. Just stuck in traffic and late for an appointment, but without any real care in the world. I noticed this at dinner the other night with my family. Everyone seemed to be in a fairly mediocre frame of mind. We were all in some way disgruntled or stressed out. I had a million things I was thinking about. And I suddenly noticed how little joy we were all taking in one another's company. And then I thought, if I had died yesterday and could have the opportunity to be back with my family, I thought of how much I would savor this moment right now. And it totally transformed my mood. It gave me instantaneous access to my best self and to a feeling of pure gratitude for the people in my life. Just think of what it would be like to lose everything and then be restored to the moment you're now in, however ordinary. You can reboot your mind in this way, and it need not take any time. The truth is, you know exactly what it's like to feel overwhelming gratitude for your life. You are in an unusual situation. There are at least 1 billion people on earth at this moment who would consider their prayers answered if they could trade places with you. There are at least 1 billion people who are suffering debilitating pain or political oppression or the acute stages of bereavement. To have your health, even just sort of, to have friends, even only a few, to have hobbies or interests and the freedom to pursue them, to have spent this day free from some terrifying encounter with chaos is to be lucky. Just look around you and take a moment to feel how lucky you are. You get another day to live on this earth. Enjoy it.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. That was a sample of a 3-minute meditation, and there's lots of different apps out there. I think you gotta experiment and see which one that you like. At first, I thought, how could anyone meditate for 20 minutes during the afternoon? And at first I thought there's so many things I should be doing. And then I realized, no, this is actually a very important part of restoration for me. And I actually come away from this feeling better mentally, emotionally, physically, and I'm better set up to do better during my afternoon of work. So, something that's another piece of homework that I will recommend to you is to actually schedule in restorative breaks hourly, even if it's just for a few minutes. Do one of the different types of breaks that we have modeled, and then also work in regular exercise into your every workday. Didn't have a chance to show you the data, but we know that there's a strong connection between good physical fitness and cognitive fitness as well. Okay, so we talked about focus, problem solving, restoration, and let's take a look at one final factor, what I'm going to call an advanced way of putting all of these things together. And that is journaling. Journaling. So, the first thing that I do every morning, as I said, so I had a couple of questions here about, what's my actual schedule. So ideally, the night before I'm asleep by 11 o'clock, and I'll wake up around 6:30 in the morning. And I know that sounds, especially for night owls, that sounds ridiculous, but it's something that I kind of moved myself into and then really start to learn to appreciate. But everyone's individual schedule is going to change. After I've done my meditation, lying in bed, just listening to 10 minutes to kind of just really kind of set the tone for the day, I will exercise for 30 minutes. I like to use this app called Streaks Workout. I really like it because, I set it for half an hour. It gives me 60 sets of exercises to do, and there's no thinking. It's like, okay, do 20 jumping jacks, do 10 push-ups, do 15 sit-ups, and there's no thinking, and I just kind of do it, and I enjoy it. And then the very next thing I do is journal. Journaling is a very important part of my workflow. It sets the actions for focus, problem solving, and restoration. And it puts all of these ideas, these intentions, um, into actual action. So, uh, I have a prompt, and this is something that I provided in the handout. So these are the 5 prompts that I use to get myself going. I'll spend about 10 minutes just writing down random ideas. But here's a few things that get me started. One thing I identified as a recurring problem was not getting high quality sleep. And so the first thing that I do is I have a question prompt that says, last night I slept at and I woke up today at. This forces me to confront the reality of the actual quality of my sleep. And by having the data, it can help you to affect change. Second question, just kind of open-ended. What's on my mind? I will just start writing down everything that's on my mind in a sort of stream of consciousness way. This isn't for anyone except for me. I will write things like, what's my mood? How am I feeling? How much stuff am I getting done? And this gives you a chance to give you some sort of feedback. One of the patterns I notice is that when I get less than, say 6 hours of sleep a night, it seems to affect my mood a little bit the next day and my productivity. And so this is something that I can identify and actually make a change. The third question that I write, a prompt, is I am grateful for. And so, the pandemic, I think, really has given us an opportunity to experience gratitude and appreciation. So I'll be honest, I never once thought about how important it was for us to have people that work in grocery stores or truck drivers or farmers. And of course, frontline health practitioners. It's not something I really ever thought about before, and I just completely took for granted. And now every day I could think of so many things that I'm actually grateful for. It really gives you some perspective on other types of problems that you have to actually write this down. To kind of get my creative juices flowing, my next prompt is, what's a creative idea for a project that I can kind of incubate? So sometimes I'll think of ideas for research experiments or lectures or presentations or an app or sometimes a story or sometimes a joke. And a lot of times these aren't great ideas, but every once in a while I come up with something that's pretty good. And I think, yeah, I am going to actually work on that and build that into an actual project. And this is something I come back to periodically throughout the day. So someone asked me, should you do this in the morning or afternoon? I kind of come back to journaling periodically throughout the day. And at least by the end of the day, I will review through how I did in my journaling. And I like to end my day with what's something really interesting or cool that happened today. And reading through these things really helps you get through sort of the rough times. It's kind of like you're acting as your own psychologist and reminding yourself and giving you some really good perspective. Then the next thing that I will do is look at my calendar and see, well, what do I have on store today? And then I will select items that I want to get done today. So I might have one big thing, 3 medium things, or 5 small things. And it all depends on how busy I am on a particular day, what commitments I have. So here's just one rough example of, on this particular day, here's the one big thing I identified, 3 medium things, 5 small things. I like to pick that one big thing and get it done first thing in the day before I even open up email or have any other sort of external information get on me. They call this eat the frog in productivity circles, because if that's the worst thing that you did all day, the rest of the day can only get better. Feels amazing if I could get this one thing off my mind, something I've been maybe procrastinating about. I get this done, and then the whole rest of the day just feels like a bonus. Then I will also exercise and meditate. A couple other things I would suggest, and I also include this template in the handout, is that every Sunday I will set aside 30 minutes to do a weekly review. So I will read through the week's journal entries, see if any patterns that emerge. I will create a list for the upcoming week. If I get and I think about this weekly list this way. This is the end of the week and I got these items completed. I will definitely consider that to be a win. So I will look at the upcoming week, identify these top priorities. I will do an end of week reflection. So reading back through my journal entries, how did things actually work? Did I assign myself too much or too little work? Any interesting patterns that emerge? And how I might do things differently. And so I find this to be a very useful 30 minutes every Sunday so that I will, feel on top of things. We'll post a link on the chat again for the handouts. And then another thing that I recommend that you do this weekend is to plan a semester retreat for yourself. And so this is something that I do at the end of every semester, and as I'm looking ahead into winter 2021. I want to look back on fall 2020. So think of yourself as a lifelong learner. I went through fall 2020. Well, answer these questions. How did it go? What didn't go so well? What lessons did you learn? So think of yourself as, being a continuous work in progress. How can you make yourself better as you move forward? And then when you think about this semester coming up, winter 2021, answer these questions. Well, what are your major goals? What are your personal goals? And, what else do I want to get done? So I think about this list this way. If this was the end of the semester and I got these things done, I will definitely consider that to be a win. This helps you to stay connected with that earlier exercise about living an examined life and really connecting your present and future goals with the mission statement that you've come up for yourself. So, those are the things that we've talked about today: focus, problem solving, restore, identify and understand these processes, and then simply repeat. One last tidbit that I'll give you is that being a student, being a knowledge worker, working in academia, it's totally different from a type of position like, say it was your job to build frames for houses. You go to the site, the start of the day, there's no frame. At the end of the day, you can look and say, wow, this is what I built today. The challenge when you're working at school is that you don't necessarily have something physical that you could point to at the end of the day and say, look, this is what I got done. And so you might keep thinking that, I have so much stuff to do. And so it's really important for us to have behavioral markers so that we can measure and understand that we've got some work done. There's nothing more that I can do today. And so I suggest that you have some sort of ritual or end of work day shutdown routine. So at the end of my day, which is typically nowadays like 4 or 5 o'clock, here's what I do. I review my daily journal. I go through and see how the day went, how accurately did I assign myself work, how did things go. I will review my calendar for the next few days about upcoming appointments. And then I will have some sort of closing ceremony. And so in my case, what I like to do is, after I've read everything, sort of like kind of like a drop the mic moment, a behavioral marker, take a pen and bang. And, when I hear that noise right now, it makes me feel, yeah, the day's over. There's nothing more that I can do. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great jump start and some things to think about as you plan ahead for success during this pandemic semester. Good luck for all you Psych 1XX3 students. I will see you on Monday. And for everyone else, the best of luck. And thank you very much to the Alumni Association.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Dr. Kim. That was great. I know I've learned a lot today, and I'm positive our guests also have a lot of new strategies they can implement into their routines so that they can also have a successful semester. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Our event is recorded, and we'll send out a link to the recording in a few days once it's been uploaded to YouTube, and it will also have closed captions. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.